I'm just trying to get out this needle bearing for the pinion that's down in that hole. I've scrubbed the cases, got them cleaned up pretty decently, stuff like that. I am having a hard time getting that needle bearing out of there. That's interesting. I didn't notice that before, but whatever. Anyways, I went and I grabbed this puller. It's a blind hole 3-jaw puller. I had to grind down each of these arms right here. So these came out like that and then went down. And they were hitting the case before the jaws down here were actually contacting the bearing. So I ground that down, all 3 of them. Just a quick grind. I got enough room now. I can contact the bearing. But I think what's happening is this lip right here. That's supposed to kind of catch the back side of the bearing. Now, I don't know how much space is actually back there, if there's any. So I might have to grind these tips down so that all I have is a little bit of a lip here and no, not much extending past it. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually just going to put this in. Tighten up these jaws on the bearing, and then I'm going to add a little bit of heat to the case and see if we can get that case to just expand enough just to get that, basically that friction grab on that bearing to get it to come out. So that's where I'm at right now. Yeah, we'll see how it turns out. So I got the case and the vise right now just between 2 pieces of cedar. Doesn't really matter what wood you use. I just happen to have cedar on hand to hold it in place, and I'm gonna get onto this. So this is gonna be a little difficult to film while I'm doing it. So I'm just gonna do it off camera here, and I will be back, let you know how it pans out. All right, be right back. I needed this win. It's coming. You can see the bearing is part way out right now. This is the apparatus I got running here. So after grinding down the space so that it would fit inside the case, the puller itself, I did have to grind down those teeth, those like jaw tips. I had to grind those down to get it in behind, even with a little bit of heat on the case. And I didn't want to put much heat in the case because I was worried about warpage and stuff like that. And also, it's aluminum. It's a giant heat sink, basically. So it's hard to put heat to the case. I ended up grinding off those tips. It looks like it probably grabbed behind the bearing, and it's pulling it out. So I am going to complete this with you guys. So here we go. Here I just what I do with my wrench right here. I was so excited. Let's see if I can actually hold the camera with my fake hand here, and we can watch this bearing come on up all on it, so together here. So there we go. I'm just cranking on the collar here. Look at that bearing slide on out. I needed this win. I really did. I was having a tough go with this, worried about wrecking that case. That is beautiful. That bearing is now out, and yeah, you can see like it just got in behind that not by very much either, just very little. Just very little. But it is out, and we are good. And you can see my grind marks on there. I just ground that right off hard. And that's her. Now I got to free up my puller off this bearing. And this case is now fully prepped and ready to go. Okay, I got the nut off of the pinion that's holding on the pinion bearing here. It is staked in the three separate locations. I unstaked it the best I could, just by using something sharp. So sharpest thing I had right now is a scribe. that I already broke the other end off on a previous project, so I didn't really care about. If you have like a cold punch or something that's really sharp pointed, you can get that in there too. But they stake it with the splines, right? So it just needs to be something that that'll fit inside that spline groove, and just basically hammer it down in between the pinion and the nut where the stakes are. So I got them best I could. They weren't fully off, but whatever is what it is. And then, so Kawasaki actually has a pinion holder tool that you put in your vise. It's spline to match this spline. You set it in there, and then you can just use a wrench, break that nut free, and then spin it off by hand from there. I don't have that tool. I had no intentions of buying that tool. I had to find a different way around it. So basically what I did is I sandwiched the pinion gear in my vise between two chunks of wood. I tried the cedar, but it was too soft, and I ended up using some what is this, just spruce chunks of 2x4 that I had laying around. And yeah, I sandwiched in there. Now trying that and you trying to use a wrench to pull that nut off, you would create so much torque that you would just spin it in the wood. And like here, you can see it did chew it up a bit here. And yeah, you would basically just spin it through there, and the wood wouldn't be strong enough to hold the pinion to break that nut free. So I bought a big socket. It is a 35 mil. If you ever needing one, it's 35 mil. And I put it on an air impact, pneumatic impact gun, highest setting, and the action of the impact was able to break that nut free before the wood fully let go. Right as it broke, the pinion started to spin in the wood, as you can see there, but it did manage to break it free. So that worked. Just using solid torque with a wrench wouldn't work, but the impact action was able to get it done, and the wood protects the gear, so you know there's no damage there, so nothing to worry about. Okay, I'm just in the process of setting up the bearing separator on the ring gear assembly, and so I just got it all tightened up, and now I'm just working it underneath the bearing right now. I've never used one of these before, so this will be interesting. And the fact that it's not technically the right size for this bearing, so that kind of sucks, but is what it is. So this is the all thread. I call it ready rod, but all thread that I bought, and I just bought a 3-foot length and then cut it in half. But now we're just tightening up underneath that bearing, so just trying to make sure it's in there good. Oh, there we go. We just actually, I think, broke the bearing free a bit on this side. We broke something anyways. Hopefully it was the bearing free, not the case, because I am kind of digging into the case here a bit too, so I might be calling her quits right here and just start pulling on it. Let's see here, just gonna give her a little more on this side, see if anything happens. Pretty tight in there. Because this isn't built for this size bearing, I'm just kind of catching the outer race, which isn't the best. We're gonna see if the puller will start pulling on that now. So here is this piece. Where did my threaded center go? Where did that go? It's got to be here somewhere. Oh, there it is. There we go. All right, we will grab this plate, put it this way. This is really off center weighted. All right, just like that. Put this in here. Let's grab a couple of washers here. Oh, put a washer on there. Thread it in. Oh, come on. Oh, this might not work. That is way too wide. Oh, crud. Well, that's no good. That's not wide enough. How am I gonna pull on that? Oh. How am I gonna pull on that now? Wish I knew what that clunk was, if it was the bearing starting to release or if I'm, because it's digging into the cast carrier here, and that's definitely not something we want to be breaking. So I'd really like to be able to pull on that now, and I don't think I can make my press work with this. I'm gonna go give that a whirl, take a look at my press, see if I can make this fit in there. Alright, so it will not work in my press. I don't have a way of accommodating the size of this ring gear, have it fall through anything that could also catch this puller. But what I'm looking at here is just the squeezing action or wedge action of this separator is actually pulling the bearing for me. So I just have to take my time and keep compressing this together. It's actually getting easier now. Oh, move the camera here. It's actually getting easier now because the bearing's already moving, so that pop we heard was the bearing moving out of its seat. So I'm just doing a little bit on each side each time, and it's lifting that bearing up for me. And if I can get this closed together enough, so underneath the bearing, which shouldn't be too long now, then I can use my puller, because these holes should be close enough together, I think. So that is what I'm currently working on it doing. So excuse me. That was gross. Just had some lunch, so. And so you can see there, it's pulling that bearing. Seems to be pulling it fairly straight off. So that's good. We'll give this a little more on this side, and let's jump over to the other side again. This side seems to be squeezing in quite a bit easier. Oh, we're squeezed up pretty good now. Put the box end on here, make it a little easier for me. My arm's probably in your way. You're probably not seeing much of anything. Basically, I'm just closing it up now. The bearing now, let's see here. The bearing now is above the wedge part of the separator, so now I'm just closing up the separator. You know, it takes a little bit of time. I have a great picture of my face while I fix my tripod leg here. So that's what I'm doing here. Basically just closing her up. There we go. She just got really loose. Get this as far as we can under that bearing. I think that bearing's got to be pulled off the spline all the way, so I think the seat and the spline are about the same size. Oh, looks like we're hardening up, so we're probably hitting the seat at this point. Oh yeah, we are. We're on the seat now, so let's see if my puller will work now. It's gonna be close. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is wide enough yet. It doesn't look like it. Yeah, it's still not wide enough. So that's not gonna work. And that's as closed up as that's gonna get. So I need to work out a different solution. To finish pulling that off. So, because I'm definitely up against the bearing seat now. And that bearing is not loose enough to pop, so. I do have a jaw puller. I wonder if I could, this is really rounded though for the jaw puller to pull on. Give that a try. That's going to be a mess. It's a pain to work with. So I'll try it off camera. I'll try a few things and I'll let you know what works out. Okay, I got my 3-jaw puller latched to the bearing separator with a steel plate over top of the spline portion of the carrier. You know, it's a little crooked, but it seems to have a good hold, so we're gonna give this a crank on and see if it's gonna work. This is awkward to hold on to while I do this, but just take my time. It's getting tight. Does not appear to be pulling square though. Looks like it's pulled more on this side than this side. Let's give her a little more, see if it'll come. It feels like something's moving. Got a little easier there for a wee bit. Well, it's still a little easier. It's coming. It's not pretty, but it is coming up. But you can see that it's definitely not pulling straight, and that concerns me. Alright, I gotta let this down. See if I can get this to pull a bit straighter. Not sure how. I think the reason why it's not pulling so straight, the reason why it wasn't pulling so straight is I had 2 jaws actually on the separator and 1 jaw on the thread portion of the all thread, and it just doesn't seem to be pulling straight, of which I don't like. Yeah, look at that. So it definitely pulled more on this side than this side. Oh, except guess what? That did it. That bearing is now loose. So that is unfortunately tight on the bearing surface, and that is not good. Let's get that backed off, and hopefully we didn't wreck that bearing surface. I really hope I didn't wreck that bearing surface. Hopefully it's harder than this separator is. I hope it's fine. We're gonna see real fast. Okay. You know what? I think the bearing surface is fine. Where the race seats, there's a mark right there, but that wasn't where the puller was, so I don't know if that's supposed to be there. See, we can see the puller was right here, and it did mark that race or that seat just a wee bit. I think we'll be okay. Oh yeah, puller was there. It did mark it. Marked it there too. Marked it there too. Frick, that is no good. Alright. Not a puller that I would use ever again. That is not a good method. Don't do it. Yeah, I had that way too tight. Don't do that ever. Do not frickin' do that. Yeah, there's small amounts of markage, but so it'll be okay. I think it'll still press just fine, whatnot, but never do that. Don't do it. Don't follow what I just did. That is not a good puller option. That makes me nervous using it on the Pinion now. I think what I'll be doing, because I will be using the press for the Pinion, is I'm not going to be tightening it around to use it to actually get to the center race like they say in the manual to do that, exactly how I did it. But I don't think I'm going to do that. And what I should have done is, when I noticed it was getting tight on there, I should have backed it off a wee bit and then pulled it. So whatever you do, I don't know, I wouldn't do that, but it's done. It's still like it's just a light scoring, but it is a scoring, so it's gonna hold the Newton X bearing just fine. You know, like that's not intended to turn anyways. It's not supposed to turn on there, so it's gonna hold it just fine. But yeah, don't do it. Find a different solution, bring it to your shop, get them to pull it off for you, whatever you got to do, but don't use that method. Okay. All right, we'll get on to the Pinion now. So I'm going to close that around. I'm actually going to switch out to the other bolts because it'll make my life easier instead of having that long rebar on there, or not rebar, all thread. I'm going to close it around, but only enough to pull with the outer race, which isn't the best either. This bearing's in decent shape, so I don't think the bearing will fall apart doing that. I think it'll still pull fine, but you really should try to pull with the inner race, especially if your bearing's real bad, because you're just going to pull that outer race and basically pull the bearing apart. But I think we'll be okay. I'm just not going to tighten it down super tight on there. Just get it into position, and that's about it, and then we'll let the press do the work. Okay, I'm outside at my little A-frame press here. Got it all set up to press off the Pinion bearing now. I'm using that bearing separator, but I haven't tightened it around, so we're basically catching just the outer race of the bearing, and then that way I don't risk any of the damage like I did with the Pinion, or with the ring gear carrier. And I'm using a socket over top of the threaded portion of the Pinion to protect those threads, and so that I'm also putting pressure on the heavier part of the Pinion spline than on the thinner part of the threaded portion. So this is what we have right here. That's the setup, and it was a 14 mil socket, fit just over top of the threaded portion nicely to get this to press out. So you can see here it's moving freely in there. Yeah, right, I got a little bit of a gap, and so now I'm just going to line this up with the ram, and now we can just start lowering the ram down, and this should press this out quite easy. Oh, look at that. And this is going to drop as it comes out, and we don't have a lot of pressure on here, so I feel safe putting my fingers in here. So I'm just gonna try to catch the Pinion as it releases instead of letting it drop through. There it goes. So now I've caught the Pinion, and that's it. So with that, here is now we got the bearing off nice and easy. The Pinion looks really good and clean now because we didn't chance scoring it at all. So that's nice and clean, much better than the job I did on the other thing. And that's a 14 mil socket. So I would have had to have otherwise pressed against this portion. I could have put a nut on here, protect those threads. But the nut that goes on here is a locking nut. So it's basically, the nut is oval. It turns oval, you know, part way up the nut. It's perfectly round to catch the first couple of threads, first thread or two, and then it ovals out, and that just generally just creates pressure on it, locks it in place. So you can't just easily finger that on or nothing. I didn't want to have to force it on. And obviously this part's thinner, so it's more, you know, if I had to put a bunch of pressure on it, which I didn't, but if I had to, it's more prone to like warpage or whatever. So I just grabbed a 14 mil socket, fit over that perfectly, sat on this collar of the spline, and put all the pressure right there instead. And so, and it gave the ram a lot of room to seat onto as well. And just press that right up, lickety split. So now we have everything pulled apart. Now we can start putting it back together. So I'm going to get some of this stuff cleaned up, and we'll start pressing these bearings and seals and everything back on, and putting the whole front diff back together.